pictures and links all embedded in these concepts. So I encourage you to explore that, on your own when you have some time. But we're going to start out by talking about the difference between the undergraduate and the graduate experience. So first of all, funding is a big difference. In general, you get paid to go to grad school. In the STEM disciplines, the vast majority of students receive full tuition support, plus a small stipend for living expenses through a variety of funding sources that we'll discuss a little bit later. So generally speaking, you really should not have to incur any extra debt to complete a graduate degree in the STEM field. So STEM being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Another difference is research. So as a graduate student, your focus should be on research rather than sort of completing coursework or just completing exams as it might have been as an undergraduate student. Your focus will really be on your master's thesis or doctoral dissertation. Your faculty advisor is a very important component of this process. You are expected to identify a faculty advisor, and part of the graduate application process is identifying a faculty member whose research interests you and with whom you'd like to work. So ideally, this faculty member can even then be kind of a sponsor or advocate during the application process. And of course, you can switch advisors once you actually enroll, but it's really not advisable to apply to a program blind without having identified at least one or two faculty members that you really think you could work with in that department and whose research interests really align with your own and what you want to get out of your graduate degree. Another difference is class size. Even if you're attending graduate school at a large institution, typically graduate courses will be smaller in size with more discussion and more of a seminar type atmosphere. And then finally, independence. So as a graduate student, much of your time will be unstructured, and it will be up to you to make your own internal deadlines and meet them. It'll be up to you to be your own best advocate and to seek out advice and help from your peers and from your mentors and faculty members. So now I'm going to pass it over to David, who is going to talk about getting paid to go to graduate school and starting out with fixed funding.
Thanks, Liv. So fixed funding is funding that is site-specific, meaning that it's tied to a specific college or university. Good examples of these most common methods of funding graduate school support would be teaching assistantships and research assistantships. In a teaching assistantship, or TA, you'd be required to assist a professor in teaching an undergraduate level course. For example, you might be in charge of teaching lab sections, or you may hold office hours, or help answer questions, or help grade exams. A research assistantship, or RA, is where you assist a faculty member in their research project, perhaps by collecting data, running experiments, analyzing data, and even participating in publishing findings. So these are positions offered by the university you are attending. And the pay usually covers tuition and provides a small living allowance. And usually these positions require about 20 hours of work per week. Other types of fixed support would be departmental fellowships. A good example of a departmental fellowship would be the IGERT traineeship. The acronym is Integrative Graduate Education and Research Traineeships. And these are programs funded by the National Science Foundation. There are about 200 of these programs located at colleges and universities nationwide with a focus on interdisciplinary, team-based graduate education. They're funded at over $30,000 per year, along with support for tuition and fees. IGERTs are interdisciplinary doctoral degree programs. For example, there is the REACH IGERT, formerly known as Biological Invasion IGERT, at UC Davis, where students studied various types of invasive species in Davis, ranging from plants to marine-based species. This particular cohort brings together students across a variety of the environmental sciences, of course, but also brought in a history major who was documenting the history of biological invasions in the state, as well as a communications major who assisted with outreach and public policy. Other examples of IGERTs include programs with a focus in robotics, wind technology, genomics, material science, just to name a few. All these can be searched for by discipline on our website, pathwaystoscience.org. Faculty may also offer support similar to IGERT under their personal research grants, which you will learn about as you go through the application process for a given department. So Liv is now going to outline some portable funding options.
Great. So there are also portable funding options. And this is funding that, in contrast to the fixed funding that David just talked about, these are fellowships that you can take with you and apply at most or all colleges and universities. And so this funding gives you a bit more freedom than the fixed funding, since you can generally take it anywhere and work on whatever research project you choose. So an example, and one that you might have heard about, is the National Science Foundation's Graduate Research Fellowship. It's one of the largest fellowships in terms of the number of fellowships awarded each year, and it's also very prestigious and has good name recognition. So it provides a $30,000 annual stipend, plus a $12,000 cost of living allowance and tuition coverage. Undergraduate seniors are eligible, and the deadlines are very early in the fall. The deadlines vary a bit by discipline, but I believe they're all generally in early November. So, for example, if you're an undergraduate senior right now, you would be applying this November for fall of 2014, so for your 2014-2015 school year funding. So, and a lot of the deadlines for these fellowships are like that. You're applying nearly a year in advance, so you do need to plan ahead. NASA also offers fellowships. So NASA fellowships, again, also range in about the $30,000 stipend. With the NASA fellowships, they're a bit unique in that they pair the student with a NASA mentor at a NASA center. So during the school year, you would work at your university with your faculty advisor, and then in the summer, you would participate in a paid summer internship where you get to work with your NASA mentor and make use of NASA facilities and all that great stuff. And our guest speaker is going to be able to talk a little bit about her experience with some NASA funding as well later, so that's great. You can apply in a couple of ways. There are some fellowships available through OSSI, is One Stop Shop Initiative. There's also the Space Technology Research Fellowships, which have a different application process, and usually their deadlines are in early or mid-December. The OSSI deadlines are usually in March. And then there are tons of other options. Most of the federal agencies offer some form of graduate fellowship, and then the private foundations offer fellowships as well. So you can search for these on our website, and we'll do a demo of that search later. So as you're investigating graduate school and funding and all these things, you should also keep in mind that professional development is very important. I encourage you to see what types of support programs are available on the campuses where you're considering applying to graduate school. And also remember that even if your department doesn't offer professional development opportunities, there may be some campus-wide programs available. So an example of campus-wide programs are AGEP. AGEP, the Alliance, stands for Alliance for Graduate Education and the Professoriate. And so this is a support program that involves alliances of institutions. This map shows kind of how many institutions are involved. And the types of activities that are provided vary campus to campus, but things like dissertation workshops, workshops on negotiating a job interview and negotiating salaries as you prepare to graduate with your degree. They may offer some modest financial support for you to travel to a research conference, and they can even help with the job search as you get towards the end of your degree. So there's an example, just one example, of a professional development program that you might take a look at. Another program to highlight is actually a small program that we host at IBP, and it's called Minorities Striving and Pursuing Higher Degrees of Success in Earth System Science. And this program brings in students from across the country to participate in 3 different phases of activities over a couple of years. And things like they go to conferences, they participate in mini workshops on networking and giving presentations and giving that elevator speech about your research, how to do a poster session. So all these types of skills that really help you sort of build your career, but may not be included in general coursework. And so finally, I just want to say, remember that each type of fellowship brings its own benefits. And often a mixed source of funding is the best thing for a student. So for example, if you think you really want to teach in the future, you should definitely try to get a TA, a teaching assistantship position, because you really want to practice your teaching skills before you're actually a professor. And yet, on the other hand, an RA position, a research assistant position, can be very valuable because you're working right under a faculty member's funded project. They're really invested in you because you're working under their funded project. But then again, the portable fellowships are great. You may really want to use those when you don't have that extra time to devote the 20 hours a week to the TA or RA position. It provides some flexibility that those other positions don't provide. So as you're planning and mapping things out, really keep the big picture in mind. Figure out what your entire funding package is. Think of it as a whole package. And remember that you're going to need funding for several years. Many doctoral programs are a 4 to 5 year commitment. So you want to make sure that you're funded through the entire thing. So now I'm going to pass it back to David, and we're going to step through kind of an idealized timeline of how to apply.
So the best, most basic way to get ready for applying to graduate school and fellowships, aspects of which may happen simultaneously, is to create a timeline to keep you organized and reminded of which deadlines are fast approaching. Most deadlines for portable fellowships are in the fall, as Liv mentioned. So if you're applying your senior year or the senior year of your undergraduate degree, you need to be starting this process in August. I want to suggest that you really take a look at the Committee on Institutional Cooperation, or CIC, handout Liv is showing you now. Their timeline is extremely helpful and detailed. This page we have open provides you with month-by-month checklist of each step. You'll want to start by searching for a program. So we have 2 very helpful handouts here that outline questions you're thinking of asking when you're applying to school. Another resource we strongly urge you all to take advantage of is our online sign-up form on the homepage of pathways-to-science.org. If you sign up, and it only takes about 5 minutes, you will immediately be sent a list of resources that match your academic interests. But additionally, you'll be sent periodic updates from IBP only about 4 per year, about opportunities and resources, and friendly reminders such as warnings about upcoming fellowship deadlines. We are also contacted by faculty who are searching for students to recruit for their programs, and we would put them in contact with students in the directory with the disciplinary backgrounds that they are seeking to recruit. So if you want to receive these resources and opportunities, we really encourage you to complete our sign-up form. Now, probably our best online resource is our searchable database, also found on our homepage, Pathways to Science. Thanks, Liv. Each program, let's see, if you could open up a search and select user group, graduate PhD. So this is the level of study that you're seeking. Then scroll down disciplines. Pick, just for example, all engineering and physical sciences. And then search programs. This gives you 159 programs that match that search. So each program in the list will bring you to our program overview. That includes a link to the program's website and contact information for each program. You can also search by institution. So if we go back to the search page, institution, discipline, and geographic location, as well as refining your search in a number of ways using our advanced search function. And to give you a quick example of that advanced search feature, let's choose graduate student, right, as the user group, and portable funding only, and just do a search on that. And there we've returned 31 programs that match PhD programs offering portable funding. So we really encourage you to play around with the search to see how it works and to get at the kinds of programs that best meet your needs. Once you do find a program, with any school, you'll need to familiarize yourself with the department to which you're applying. You need to research the faculty members you may want to work with, making sure you would want to work with more than one person in a given department. Reason being that faculty are often transitioning due to research or sabbaticals, so it's important to show your willingness to work with multiple people. When you find a department you feel is a good fit, ask to visit. Many schools have support to bring interested candidates, which gives you the opportunity to see and meet potential faculty, but also to meet the current graduate students. Things to look for. Are they happy? Are they getting published? Could you see yourself there among that group, for 6 years or more? There's also a time to be starting a dialogue about how you will be supported through your entire degree. If you do not receive any fellowships, what type of departmental funding will be supporting you? And what are the expectations associated with that support? You definitely do not want to be sending in a blind application, which Liv outlined at the beginning. You need to have a faculty advisor in place prior to submitting your application. So in August, in addition to starting your program search and contacting programs that interest you, you would want to start drafting your personal statement and reviewing and planning when to take the GREs, or also known as the graduate education records. Many but not all graduate schools require the GRE. Preparing is key. The GRE.org is an excellent website with free resources, including information on where to find test fee waivers if you are a student needing that support. Going back to our CIC timeline and checklist, it is suggested that you start preparing in August and plan on taking GRE by October. So that's coming right up. In September, you will want to be reviewing and rewriting your personal statement. Use your on-campus resources like your writing centers and your peers and your mentors to review your statement. Your personal statement is very important, so making sure you have many sets of eyes reviewing it again and again. And please see our handout, Writing Strong Essays and Personal Statements, for more tips. That one is among many resources you'll find available on our website that will help you apply and support you in finding a grad program. So also, again, from the timeline, again in September, this is when you should be applying for portable fellowships and scholarships. Most of these have deadlines in late October or early November for the following academic year. A fall 2013 application is for fall 2014 funding. We are frequently contacted by students in the winter looking for fellowships and scholarships for the upcoming fall, and in most cases it's too late. So you really need to be organized and applying early for all funding possible in the early fall, like right now. Through October, November, and December, you should be taking the GRE, preferably in October. This, among other things, gives you the opportunity to retake it if you would like to, asking for letters of recommendation, and submitting your applications. Making sure you're choosing someone who will write you a good letter of recommendation. Supply them with your resume and a supporting document which highlights the work you've done in their class or research program. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to give you the best letter possible. This includes giving your letter writer lots of lead time. Also, follow up. In most cases, you can see online if a letter has been submitted. Pleasant but persistent reminders are good and often necessary. Faculty are really busy, but they understand the importance of your letters. So again, pleasant but persistent reminders are okay. And in most cases, the faculty will appreciate getting little nudges to make sure that they get it done, because they really want to do it for you. So here again, please see our supporting document with methods on how to go about cultivating strong letters of reference. When you do learn of your acceptance status, make sure to follow up and thank the people who wrote your letters of recommendation. They want to know the outcome, and these are the same people you'll be asking again in the future for a letter of support. And they're the most likely to go the extra mile if you're courteous and to keep them in the loop about all of your academic milestones. And after you submit your application, follow up with the departments to make sure your application was received. This is the type of conduct, it's what will make you stand out as a serious applicant. Please use the many supporting documents on our website in our resources toolbox that I mentioned to give you more detailed tips for writing personal statements, securing good letters of recommendation, and what to expect in graduate school, as well as the CIC packet with timeline and checklist. We'll be sending you links to all of our materials following our presentation tonight, so that you'll have them handy in your inbox. If you have any questions about what you've heard so far, we will be taking them at the end, but also please write them in the chat box. So if we do not have time to get to your question, we can follow up with you in the next few days. So at this time, I would like to introduce our special guest, Marcia Cole, research chemist at Agricultural Research Services for the USDA.
Hello. Thank you for that amazing introduction. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone. If you can hear me, then you probably can tell I have a southern twang. And I apologize in advance if it makes it difficult to understand me, but I will try my hardest to articulate my best and, of course, to answer any questions that come about. So I will give you a little bit of information about myself. I am a native of Dallas, Texas. Dallas is pretty big, and we have several high schools. So the high school I graduated from was North Garland Math, Science, and Technology High School, and it was being converted as I was attending there. And I graduated high school in 2003. And when I graduated high school, I went to Grambling State University, which is a historically black college and university. And there I majored in chemistry. And immediately afterwards, I went to Louisiana State University, where I recently obtained my PhD in analytical chemistry. So I have a very interesting background, different from what my resume or biography may state. And I think I can identify with many people in the terrors of going into graduate school, because you don't know what to expect sometimes. Everything looks amazing when you're going in, but then when you get there, it may be, difficult. And, all of the information that's being provided is really beneficial. You do get paid to go to graduate school, but a lot of that is going to be dependent upon your advisor that you choose. Some advisors, they write a lot of grants, and they are very aggressive in securing research funds so that they can support their students in the event that they, would need research support instead of having to have a teaching assistantship. At Louisiana State University, and it may be similar to other institutions, when they accept you into the university, they guarantee you 6 years of funding as a teaching assistantship. So usually they won't accept you if they can't pay for you or provide you income to live. And, of course, they covered our tuition and fees as an assistant, and we didn't really have to pay much of anything to attend. Now, there are the chances where you could get a fellowship. You could apply to the national fellowships, which are very competitive, and sometimes the institution will have smaller fellowships or fellowships that are supported through offices at the university that you can apply for as well. And for me, when I first attended LSU, I didn't even know I was put into a pool to receive a fellowship. So I received a fellowship coming in unbeknownst to me. And that supported me for 2 years. That was the National Science Foundation, Louisiana Alliance for Minority Participation, which we call LAMP, or it's an AMP program. And then Bridge to Doctorate is the most specific name that is affiliated with that. So when you attend universities, particularly your STEM department, you can inquire about a Bridge to Doctorate fellowship opportunity. Now, after my second year, during my second year, I was applying. I always apply for fellowships because I was encouraged to do that ever since undergrad. So I applied and I received a fellowship from NASA, the Harriet Jenkins Predoctoral Fellowship Award, and that opportunity gave me funding for 3 years and also an opportunity to do research at NASA for a summer as well. Now, I see there's a question about if there's a difference in funding between a master's and a PhD student. Yes, there's a difference. When you're in STEM, and this may be exclusive of engineering, but usually with your physical sciences and technology-based research programs, the stipend that is given to you would be on the premise that you complete a PhD, all the requirements to obtain your PhD. Usually if you go in saying you want a master's, the stipend is significantly less, and or they may not support you, because the goals of pretty much all of the departments is to get you into a PhD and to convert you into faculty. That's kind of what the premise of most of the national grants are written, is to, transform underrepresented students or students with, amazing potential into faculty to make this cycle of research. So there is a difference. Now, when you go to get your PhD, there's some milestones that will occur that if it's too much, you can always leave with a master's. So if you go to get your PhD, you take your courses pretty much your first year. Your second year, you prepare to take your candidacy exam. At that exam, we call it the general examination at LSU. At that exam is when you are basically identified as a PhD candidate. When you have met that, milestone, if you decided I don't want to do research, you could leave with a master's after you complete some more coursework. But after that, you are considered a PhD candidate until you defend and, meet all of the research requirements provided by your advisor, and then you would be awarded the PhD. So there is a difference if you go inward asking, about a master's or a PhD, but there is always a chance that if you decide during the process that you don't want a PhD, you can always leave with a master's, and, that's your prerogative. They might be upset, but if it's best for you, it's best for you. So a lot of the funding opportunities, there's going to be a difference between master's and PhD because they usually don't want to fund people who are only going to get a master's. The idea about funding a PhD student is that you are going to be making an investment into that PhD candidate so that when they graduate, they will also return the favor and produce more and more and more researchers. Masters usually at the higher levels turn out to be really, really great technicians, but they don't head research groups. They teach, but they don't, they're not PIs, and they don't, usually don't teach at Tier 1 institutions. So that's another reason if you are interested in getting a master's, it's going to be much more challenging. And depending on what your lifelong goals are, you would have to assess all possibilities that you may not get the support, and you might have to work to help out. Oftentimes they don't want you to have a teaching assistantship and outside funding. They will usually make you choose. So, it's an interesting transition, at this point, because it's a gray area between being an adult and being a student, because it's at the convenience of the institution. One thing also that was really important to note is that when I had the Harriet G. Jenkins Predoctoral Fellowship Award, a lot of these awards are going to say they are tax-free. But tax-free is a tricky little nomenclature. It means it's tax-free to the people giving it to you. It is not tax-free to the recipient. So keep that in mind whenever you receive a $30,000 tax-free award or a $40,000, however much it is. It depends on how the funding institution provides it to the IRS. And when that happens, you might be responsible more than likely to pay the taxes on that award. So even it might be $30,000, but you pay $4,000 or $5,000 in taxes, you only have $25,000. So I really make a point to tell people, when you do get outside funding, don't spend all of it. $2,333 a month might sound really great as a struggling graduate student. And if you spend all of it, you might be crying on the back end. So even with internship opportunities, tax-free means it's tax-free to them, not tax-free to you. So to be on the safe side, you just might want to keep some money aside with any of the funding opportunities. Now, when I did get the opportunity to go to NASA, I was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, and I worked with Dr. Adrian Ponce. And as a chemist, I have applied microbiology and cell biology background. So the research goal that I had there was to help minimize surface contamination of spacecrafts, because they found that as a spacecraft leaves from Earth to the destination in space, it either brings bacteria to the outer space, which is not ideal, or it might pick up other microbes and bring them here. And in a study, there was results that said that Salmonella typhi, which can lead to typhoid fever, actually became more virulent, more dangerous when it went to microgravity environments. So it's a really big initiative for NASA to prevent the forward and the backward contamination via spacecraft and other vessels that may transverse between the atmospheres. So that was my particular research project, and what I did is I used chemicals to inhibit the activity of spores, and spores are like armadillos. They go into this ball when it's very stressful, and you can't kill them when they're in a ball, but you have to wait for them to come out into like a living organism, and then you can kill them. But with the chemicals, we were able to inhibit that process and have them die in their little shell. So, and spores are the most robust. They're the hardest to kill. So, that opportunity gave me some exposure to apply and learn how to critically think and apply the knowledge that I've gained so that I was more attractive to other fellowship and funding opportunities. With all of the internship opportunities, sometimes it may seem one-sided, but if you can take that information that you're learning in your core classes, because the information doesn't change when you go to graduate school, if you could take that information and translate it to the things that you're doing outside of the institution in an internship and or at graduate school, these things will help you in deciding what it is that you really like to do, what are you good at, what aspects of research would you like to be in. If you're a PhD, your only options are not limited to being a professor or working at a bench. You could be a liaison. You can speak on behalf of agencies. You can, basically troubleshoot problems. You can work in industrial backgrounds. You could do a lot, but we don't have that clear exposure to tell us our options, and that's where the internships and the research experience and just your own personal hobbies are going to come into play. It's kind of hard to give you advice if I don't even know exactly what are your concerns, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them up here. I'll try to answer them as I see them.
Sure.
But, yeah, graduate school is going to be a time where you will transform, you will mature, you will feel stressed, but it's definitely rewarding. It's the highest degree you can get in a physical science, and there are a lot of rewarding opportunities that come about when you attend conferences, you network. And the beautiful thing about networking and taking advantage of those opportunities is that when people see your name, they will vie for you. They will go for you. They will take your resume specifically to human resources and they say, hire this person. I want this person. I met this young man, this young woman at a conference. I met them at a NASA facility, on the airplane, whatever. They're amazing. I want to hire them. And when you have those people on your side, now you have interesting perspectives of recommendations to support other applications. Most people, when they write their applications, they only have their professors and maybe other teachers and family members and things like that, the pastor. But when you have the CEO of Dow or somebody else, it has a little bit more weight and is versatile and it's unique. People don't have that support. So when you have opportunities to network, that is another way to make yourself more marketable by taking advantage of the different types of letters of recommendation you can get. I don't know what else I should mention.
Great. The first question is, besides GRE scores, research and publications, recommendations, and personal statements, how else can I strengthen my application and appeal to graduate school programs?
Well, for me, I will tell you that my GRE scores weren't great. I think I got a 1080 or something like that. It was really, really bad. And, to make it even worse, I had like 3 years of GRE prep, but I'm not a great standardized test taker. So everybody, your jaw drop on the floor. It was horrible. But my GPA, was mediocre. I had about a 3.57 average, which I was really insecure about what was ahead of me going into graduate school. So the I say that to say the GRE scores and your GPA, they are important depending on the institution that you're attending. Some institutions, they like those statistics. It kind of it has some credibility to the institution that you're applying for. They are very important. Now, if you can score as high as you can when you take them, but don't let it come to the downfall of yourself. If you feel like you didn't do as well, there are still programs that will take you. One professor told me that a lot of the best scientists don't do well in coursework. They're better in the lab. They're better with practical situations. And sometimes professors and a lot of the people in the departments that are reviewing your applications can see through that. So your research and publications, if you have them, yes, that will definitely speak volumes. And, of course, recommendations. Now, the length of your recommendation is going to be important because there are some professors that say, yes, I'll write a recommendation letter for you, and it is 3 lines. Now, it's important for you to ask, can you write a strong letter of recommendation? And don't be afraid to ask them if you could read it because it's up to you to decide whether or not you actually want to use their letter on your behalf. It might seem a little, ballsy, to ask someone, can I see what you wrote about me? But if they wrote something pleasant and if they wrote something worth sharing, it shouldn't be a problem. In terms of your personal statement, yes, that has an impact because people like to see the diversity in the individuals that they pull in. Because, as I've said before, a lot of the federal funding that's available, they have specific factors that are incorporated into the grant. They want to broaden underrepresentation of different groups. They want to impact certain populations. And in your personal statement, you can weave those intricacies in there so that they know, hey, my GPA might not be great. My GRE score is horrible. However, I'm really bright. I meet this criteria, and I'm hardworking. So right. They all go hand in hand.
Marsha, I've been on scholarship review committee. This is for an undergraduate scholarship, but I think it probably applies to some of the graduate fellowships. And a couple of things that they were looking for in particular was sort of any sort of hardships you've overcome, like your passion for science, and any hardships you've overcome in your sort of career thus far. and then also kind of community service and giving back, like helping the next generation. Again, pursue science. So, if you read, some of these portable fellowships, maybe if you read the goals of the fellowships, there may be things like that they're really looking for that you can highlight in your, in your personal statement.
Absolutely. Got a couple of other questions in the chat box. One of them is, what happens if you get a PhD fellowship but end up only getting a master's? Like, what do you do then?
Oh, well, so this is, okay, so when you apply for a fellowship, they give you, like they'll say $30,000 3-year award, right? But it's 3-year award contingent upon performance and you meeting the specific criteria. So at the turn of the semesters, you typically have to show proof of enrollment. You have to submit your transcripts and things like that. They don't, as far as I understand now, I'm sure anything is possible, but they do not retroactively claim fellowship money if you decide that you don't want to get a PhD. What they will not do is pay you for the semesters that you would have been there. So had I had the Harriet Jenkins Predoctoral Award for my third year, and for during my third year of graduate school, and I've used it for 1 year, and I decided, I'm going to quit grad school and get my master's, then I just wouldn't have gotten funded for the second and third year, but I wouldn't have had to pay back the first year. So it's, of course, they might feel, kind of sad about it, but, it's your choice. But they usually don't claim it. They'll just write it off as a loss statistic when they do their program analysis.
And depending upon your major, some of, like as Marcia said, there are fellowships for master's engineering students. And I was a geography major, and my master's degree was covered. So it depends a lot, I think, on your discipline. There certainly is a lot more out there for PhD students, but if you're really wanting only a master's, I wouldn't throw in the towel that you can't get funding.
Right. Now, there are opportunities that so this is what I do. It's not anything really amazing, but Google is beautiful. And, yeah, they're making a big thing about don't get Scroogled, but you know what? It works. So if you're Googling, just put in anything you think you're interested in. I wanted to be a cosmetic chemist. At heart, I still will have my own cosmetic line. Look for it. You might see me on a billboard one day. However, so what I would do is I'd put cosmetic, sugarcane, PhD fellowship, and something is bound to pull up. You could put in any combination of a lot of things, and something will come up. You could put master's, you put undergraduate, predoctoral, postdoctoral. And one thing I want to let you know, too, is predoctoral is before you take your candidacy exam. For national fellowships, it's usually up to your 4th semester. And when you apply for the NSF fellowship in NASA and NIH, your chances of getting the fellowship decrease as you get further along in your program, because the idea is to fund senior undergraduate students versus the people that are already in grad school. So that's something to keep in mind when you apply. However, there are some funding opportunities that do say, master's or PhD or master's student studying in or, something like that, but they may not be as lucrative. But there's nothing wrong with getting a lot of the smaller fellowships because they're less competitive, I guess, and so you can apply for all of those and add them together, and as long as you don't surpass the financial aid requirement in your institution, you have no worries. And if that happens, they just won't give you all your money. You just max out. So, just be creative when you're searching and put the things that you think are applicable for yourself. So predoctoral is before you take your candidacy exam, usually the 4th semester of graduate school. Postdoctoral is after you have acquired your PhD. Dissertation award is when you're already a PhD candidate and before you've graduated. So it goes predoctoral, dissertation award, postdoctoral. So when you look for those things, that will kind of help you too.
Mm-hmm. Got another question about letters of recommendation. One asking, is it generally considered acceptable to have a PhD student that you're working with write a recommendation for you? In other words, do they have to be a full, professor to provide a good recommendation?
It would probably be better to have the person that they work for write the recommendation letter because they have no credentials. They have no weight. I actually, for myself, my PhD advisor, Dr. Warner, he's like really, really, really busy. So whenever some of the undergrad students that worked for me asked for recommendation letters, he asked me to write the letter, and he just signs his name on it. Now, when I graduated and the student asked me to write her recommendation letter, I told her, well, I'm going to do it after my first day of being at the USDA so that way I can put USDA on there, and it's a little bit more like better than just saying, PhD, unemployed. So, that was just, the perspective. But you always want to have somebody with usually a title or some kind of credential, whether they have a position somewhere, they have an affiliation that's notable. Usually people don't really regard, the pastor or the person you just kind of work closely with as, heavyweight, because the person you work with closely works for somebody else that has much more weight. So you might want to go try to work that avenue.
Got another question about personal statements, which is how can I write a personal statement that stands out? I've been really good about planning ahead for grad fellowship applications, but I've been putting off my personal statement because I don't know where to start. Oh, blank page syndrome. Been there.
This is when you need to tap into the right brain. So I'm not a typical scientist. I think I'm pretty bubbly, but you got to find that bubbly part of you if you don't have that, if you don't think it's that at the surface. So that creative part, it's always, you just got to get that attention grabber. Like for me, because I had a very hard upbringing, so my first line was most of my life has been spent living in motels, eating the same meal daily, something to that extent. So when you read it, you're like, oh, my God, is this like a reality TV show? And then you got them. After that, you go into, but that hasn't held me down. So, I remember seeing someone that said, all my life has been surrounded by fire. And you're like, what? My village was burned down in Africa. My apartment burned down when I was 4 in America, and now I want to be a fireman. Well, you know what? It makes sense. So you have to find the thing that connects it all and be creative whenever you just get that tagline. Make your commercial. Just think of that one thing that's like your good. That first line is your commercial, and then follow it up with why you're so great.
Great advice. I think we'll take probably one more question before we close. Have one that says, I have 2 pre-kindergarten children, and is there any support out there for people like me, and how difficult would it be to balance grad school and family life? So I don't know if any of you guys have experience with that, but that's a good question.
I don't have any children, but I think for me it was challenging because I have a dog. So it was challenging only because when you're doing experiments, it's hard to have finite times that you be in the lab and you go home. However, when you have a family, now there are people that are in the program that have families and they make it work where they do 8 to 5 and that's all they give and they graduate in record time. So I think it will still be challenging, but I think just in life in general, you have 2 more responsibilities that I don't have. So your life is probably going to be more challenging and you've learned to organize it. So it's going to be difficult. Now, in terms of funding, there are opportunities out there, and that's probably your unique glitch, or your niche, where you can get in there and you can say, but I'm still here, I'm interested, I want to be a role model for my children. I haven't let, my children halt me in my ambitions of becoming a PhD or whatever it is that you want to do. But put that in Google, mothers, return to college, whatever, PhD graduate program, see what you get. And even on the Department of Education websites, there are some funding opportunities, too, that some people miss.
And ask at your department about child care options and things like that. And and there are also, of course, there are fellowships targeted specifically at women. So there's that avenue as well.
And the only thing I also think might be difficult is, as a grad student, if you're by yourself, you don't get paid a lot of money, and they pay you right above, especially if you're an assistantship, they pay you right above any kind of support that you could get, statewide or, federally. So if, you think that might be an option, it might not exactly be there for you. So just keep in mind that if you're by yourself and your sole source income and you have no other avenues, that might be the biggest stress on its own, when you think about your car and your apartment rent and lights and things like that.
Well, I want to thank all of our presenters for such awesome information tonight, always chock full of great advice, and also to everyone who asked such great questions.